WWE announced on Friday that SummerSlam will take place on a Saturday this year, August 21st, from a summer destination location that will be revealed during the 2021 Belmont Stakes pre-race show next Saturday on NBC. Sports Business Daily says they are holding the event at an NFL stadium to be determined, which would be the first time SummerSlam has ever been held at an NFL stadium. The last big stadium they ran for SummerSlam was Wembley in the UK in 1992. Belmont is in New York. So if it wasn't for all of this stadium talk, I would say that they would announce it from Madison Square Garden, which I think would be a great place to do it. I like the idea of a summer destination outdoors, maybe like a big stadium for SummerSlam, but I don't know. To do a big MSG show coming out of the pandemic, bring it back to New York, I like that idea. Doesn't sound like that's going to happen. But the night before SummerSlam, they have a show in Phoenix, and the night after the pay-per-view, they have a super show in Denver. So they're not flying West Coast to East Coast and back. That would be ridiculous. Per Andrew Zarian of the Mat Men podcast, it's going to be Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. But there is also a Manny Pacquiao fight that night in Vegas at one of the smaller arenas. That has not yet been announced which building that's going to be in. And look, I don't care if Pacquiao is not the star or the draw that he once was. A big boxing fight, especially big boxing fight in Vegas, will always trump pro wrestling. Even if WWE runs a bigger building, they have a crowd twice as large, 3 times as large, it doesn't matter. In the media, a big boxing fight will always be treated more, like a bigger deal than a pro wrestling event will be. That's just the way it is. Even if Pacquiao is not the star he once was, 10 years ago. Doesn't matter. So running head-to-head in the same market with a Pacquiao fight seems very unwise to me. But they could always run, I guess they could run earlier in the day if they want. I mean, they used to run pay-per-views at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. East Coast time. They did that with WrestleMania 10. But they are reportedly planning a huge main event. And the big name rumored to be brought in as the guest host, per Andrew Zarian, is Cardi B, whose song Up is the official theme song for SummerSlam this year. And, hey, she used to be a WWE fan during the Ruthless Aggression era. She's tweeted about that before. She said Stone Cold was retired by the time she started watching, but her favorites used to be Batista and Booker T, and Eddie Guerrero and Edge and Triple H and Lita. Beyond the song, though, her involvement has not yet been confirmed. Again, that's just a rumor at this point, but they are planning a big name, and I guess she would fit the bill. The other rumor going around is that the big match planned, the big main event planned for SummerSlam this year, is Roman Reigns defending his Universal Championship against John Cena, who is wrapping up filming on his Suicide Squad spinoff early in July. He's been up in Vancouver for months filming. That's why he said he couldn't be at WrestleMania this year. He said logistically, he's up in Vancouver. I can't be in 2 places at once, otherwise I would be there. So he's wrapping up at the beginning of July, and it would make sense to get him back on that first show in front of fans on July 16th, which is the live SmackDown before Money in the Bank, to maybe start setting that up. Cena against Reigns is one of the biggest matches that they could do with the current roster at this point. It's been 4 years since they had their one and only singles match on pay-per-view, which had Cena putting Reigns over. But things are very different now. Roman is in the middle of this great heel run. The outcome should not be any different than it was back then. But if you could do Cena versus Reigns in a stadium, with the story of John Cena going for title number 17, trying to dethrone the tribal chief, I think that would be huge. I want them to get Brock Lesnar back for the show, for a match with Bobby Lashley. That way you get 2 big matches out of it. And then you got the story of how would Paul Heyman fit into things with Lesnar in one match on one brand and Roman in the other on the other brand. I think that could be a very interesting story in itself. And then you do the rematch between Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair on that show too. I mean, that was one of your WrestleMania main events this year. So doing that match, doing the big rematch between them at SummerSlam, I think as far as the women's matches go, is probably the biggest women's match they could do there on that side. Now, Cena was involved in a big controversy this week. I just got done talking about actually two controversies, right? Willie Urbina, Jim Ross, and now John Cena. Involved in a big controversy this week, which is not something you've heard. I don't think you've ever heard me say that before on this podcast. John Cena is not one to be involved typically in anything controversial. He is frankly, when I think of John Cena, you think of other names over the years and they've gotten into trouble or they've been involved in controversial things or they've made controversial public statements or whatever. John Cena, the word I think of is clinical. It's a very clinical, I don't know, very vanilla, very boring. You don't really hear him being involved in stuff like... It's why Vince McMahon probably loved him so much. That and all the merch he sold. But he was involved in a controversy this week. Although Michael Cole used to use that word about John Cena all the time. He used to call him the most controversial name in WWE. Polarizing, Michael. Polarizing. The word is polarizing. But it started when Cena was being interviewed on a TV network in Taiwan while promoting the new Fast and the Furious film, and he said that Taiwan was the first country to watch the film. Right? It's a very innocent statement. Well, that did not sit well with China, which believes that Taiwan will one day be unified with the mainland. They do not believe that Taiwan is its own independent country. And for over 70 years, Taiwan has governed itself. So Cena stepped on a political landmine that I'm sure he had no idea about when he made the comment. It was an innocent comment. And then, no doubt, due to pressure from the movie studio, he recorded a short apology video that looked more like a hostage video. You would think President Xi was standing off camera holding a gun to his head. In the video, Cena spoke in Mandarin, which he learned while he was in WWE, when WWE was looking to expand its business into China. Here's the translation from the South China Morning Post. Hi China, I'm John Cena. I'm in the middle of Fast and Furious 9 promotions. I'm doing a lot of interviews. I made a mistake in one of my interviews. Everyone was asking me if I could use Chinese. The movie staff gave me a lot of information, so there was a lot of interviews and information. I made one mistake. I have to say something very, very, very important now. I love and respect China and Chinese people. I'm very, very sorry about my mistake. I apologize. I'm very sorry. You must understand that I really love, really respect China and the Chinese people. My apologies. See you. He never said what he was apologizing for. But he apologized so many times you would think that his wife found steamy texts on his phone from Nikki Bella. Not exactly a profile in courage is John Cena, nor is anybody debating the fact that he has great respect for China. But again, he never specified what he was apologizing for, but boy did he apologize. Over and over and over again. But this is the LeBron James thing all over again. When LeBron said that the GM of the Houston Rockets was misinformed, when he tweeted his support for the protesters in Hong Kong, and then he talked about the GM only thinking about himself and not the ramifications it can have on others, he saw billions of dollars potentially being flushed down the toilet at a time when the NBA was trying to make inroads in China. With Cena, the Fast and Furious movie that he's in, which I think comes out here in the States next month, it already made $137 million in its first week in China. Those movies make billions of dollars. That franchise is a fucking cash cow for Universal. And the majority of that money comes out of the Asian market, and they know that. So they forced him to apologize, or they compelled him to apologize. That's exactly what happened here. There's no doubt, not a doubt in my mind. Now, could he have said no? Yeah, of course he could have. He could have turned around and said, go fuck yourself. But how many people would do that? when you're in that position, I know it's easy to sit there and say, well, I would have said no. Look, I'd like to think I would have done the same thing. But when push comes to shove and, you're in that position, and it's not just, your career, but you have pressure that, look, if this isn't fixed, it could affect all of us, and it could affect the studio, and it could affect, all these different things. You have to apologize. This is all your fault. I mean, I'm sure there was an enormous amount of pressure on him. I'm not going to pile on him. I'm not going to cancel him or any of this other nonsense. He's a product of the system that employs him and pays his salary. He's looking at his career potentially hanging in the balance. And it shouldn't be that way. I mean, it kind of sounds overly dramatic to say that, but I mean, if you really look at how invested all of these studios and companies are in that Asian market and in China specifically, it's not that far-fetched at all. That's why they're all so scared. And I'm sure WWE wasn't too thrilled about it at the same time that they're trying to bring this guy back. But this will largely be forgotten. Cena will be fine. I don't see it affecting anything he does with WWE in a couple of months. People won't even be talking about this anymore. I'm not saying you can't criticize the man. Criticize away. But some of the comments directed at him are completely over the top. He doesn't want to see his movie career thrown away over one comment. Over one innocent comment. Again, I think having him as part of the SummerSlam card is smart business. Cena versus Reigns, if that's the match, it is a big attraction. It's only been done once before, and that was on a B-level pay-per-view because that was the only time they had Cena for to do it. He had to go off, I think, and film another movie. So it's a match that belongs on a big stadium show, not at No Mercy, and it gives Roman Reigns another big name to beat.